Imagine this. The sun has disappeared behind the mountains. Darkness spreads across the land. The temperature begins to fall. Inside a small cave, your family gathers around the only thing keeping everyone alive: a small fire. Its orange glow warms your freezing hands. It keeps dangerous animals away. It cooks your food. It lights the darkness. It gives you hope. Then, a cold wind rushes through the cave. The flames begin to dance. They grow smaller, smaller, until silence. The fire is gone. Everything around you disappears into darkness. You can hear something moving outside. A distant howl echoes through the valley. Your children move closer to you. Everyone waits. No one speaks, because everyone knows the terrifying truth. You don't have a lighter. You don't have matches. You don't even have a spark. If you can't make another fire before sunrise, someone in your family may never wake up again. Today, losing electricity is an inconvenience. Thousands of years ago, losing fire could be a death sentence. But here's the incredible part. Ancient humans didn't simply survive after their fires went out. They developed astonishing techniques to protect, transport, and even recreate fire from nothing but the natural world. Some of those methods were so effective that people continued using them for thousands of years. So, how did they do it? To understand the answer, we first need to understand what fire really meant to our ancestors. Most people today think of fire as something that keeps us warm. But for prehistoric humans, fire was much more than heat. Fire was protection. Fire was food. Fire was light. Fire was medicine. Fire was technology. And perhaps most importantly, fire gave humans something no other animal possessed: the ability to control the night. As the sun disappeared each evening, the world transformed. Predators became active. Temperatures dropped. Visibility vanished. For millions of years, darkness belonged to animals with sharper teeth, stronger muscles, better hearing, and far better eyesight than humans. But then, everything changed. One burning branch allowed humans to push back the darkness itself. Lions hesitated. Hyenas stayed farther away. Wolves became cautious. The fire didn't make humans stronger. It made every predator think twice. That small circle of light became one of the safest places in an incredibly dangerous world. But protection was only the beginning. Long before scientists understood bacteria, prehistoric people noticed something remarkable. Meat cooked over fire lasted longer. It tasted better. It was easier to chew. And people became sick less often. They had no idea why. They simply remembered what worked. Generation after generation, fire transformed the human diet. Hard roots became soft enough to eat. Tough meat became easier to digest. Some poisonous plants even became safe after cooking. Without realizing it, humans were unlocking more energy from every meal. Many anthropologists believe this extra energy helped support the growth of the human brain. In other words, fire may have helped shape the species watching this video today. But there was one terrifying problem. Making fire wasn't easy. Not even close. Movies often show someone rubbing two sticks together for a few seconds before flames magically appear. Reality was very different. Sometimes it took hours. Sometimes it didn't work at all. Sometimes people failed over and over again. And every failed attempt meant another hour without warmth. Imagine trying to make fire while your fingers are freezing, your children are crying, rain has soaked the forest, and hungry predators are getting closer. Suddenly, keeping a fire alive seems much easier than making a new one. That's exactly why ancient humans treated fire almost like a living member of the group. It wasn't something they casually used. It was something they protected. Some researchers believe many prehistoric camps tried to keep at least one fire burning continuously, day and night. Someone always watched the flames. Someone always collected more wood. Someone always protected the embers from wind and rain. Because everyone understood one simple truth: as long as the fire stayed alive, the people had a chance. But nature doesn't care about preparation. Storms arrived without warning. Heavy rain soaked everything. Strong winds scattered burning wood. Entire forests flooded. Sometimes a tribe had no choice but to abandon its camp immediately, and despite every precaution, the fire died. Imagine watching your last glowing ember disappear beneath cold gray ash. At that moment, your entire future depended on one question: can we make another one? And that question would test every skill your ancestors had ever learned. Because starting a fire in the prehistoric world wasn't luck. It was one of the greatest survival skills ever mastered by humanity. The first step wasn't creating a flame. It was finding the right materials. Without perfectly dry tinder, making fire was almost impossible. Ancient people searched for anything that could catch even the smallest spark: dead grass, dry moss, thin strips of tree bark, bird nests, cotton-like seed fibers, even the fluffy heads of dried plants. These weren't fuel. They were the beginning of life itself. One tiny glowing ember placed inside this bundle could grow into a fire, but finding dry tinder wasn't always easy. After heavy rain, the ground stayed wet for days. Almost everything was soaked. So where did ancient humans look? They looked where most people never would: inside dead standing trees, under large rocks, beneath thick bark, inside hollow logs, deep inside caves. These places often stayed dry even during storms. Generations of experience taught them exactly where nature hid its secrets. Only after preparing the tinder did they begin the hardest part: making the spark. One of the oldest methods was the hand drill. A straight wooden stick was placed vertically against a flat piece of softer wood. The stick was rolled rapidly between the palms, faster and faster, until smoke appeared. This sounds simple. It wasn't. The stick had to be the right species of wood. Too hard. Nothing happened. Too soft. The wood simply crumbled. Even the moisture in the air could determine success or failure. Your hands burned. Blisters formed. Your arms became exhausted. Yet you couldn't stop. Because stopping meant losing the heat you had spent several minutes creating. Many attempts failed only seconds before success. Imagine spending 40 minutes rubbing wood together, seeing the first thin line of smoke, then accidentally knocking everything over. You would have to begin again. Not tomorrow. Immediately. Because night wasn't waiting. Over time, humans invented better methods. One of the most important was the bow drill. Instead of spinning the stick with bare hands, they used a curved branch tied with animal sinew or plant fibers. Moving the bow back and forth spun the drill much faster than human hands ever could. The speed produced more friction. More friction created more heat. Eventually, a tiny piece of black wood began to glow. Not a flame, not even a spark. Just a glowing coal no larger than a grain of rice. Everything depended on that tiny ember. The glowing coal was carefully transferred into the dry tinder bundle. Nobody rushed. Nobody panicked. One careless movement could destroy 30 minutes of hard work. Then came the moment of truth. They gently blew, slowly, carefully, patiently. The ember grew brighter. A thin stream of smoke curled upward. More air, more smoke. Suddenly, orange light burst from the bundle. Fire had returned. For a prehistoric family. That moment wasn't ordinary. It was a celebration. But not every culture relied only on friction. Where suitable stone was available, people discovered something extraordinary. Certain rocks, such as flint, could produce sparks when struck against iron-rich minerals like pyrite. Each strike sent tiny glowing particles flying into the tinder. Click, nothing, click, nothing, click. A tiny spark, again, again, again. Eventually, success. Unlike friction fire, this method depended more on precision than endurance. Different environments produced different solutions. Humans adapted because survival demanded adaptation. But perhaps the most valuable lesson our ancestors learned wasn't how to create fire. It was how to avoid losing it in the first place. Many groups carried fire wherever they traveled. Instead of transporting flames, they transported embers. A glowing coal could survive for hours if protected correctly. It was wrapped in layers of dry bark, buried inside ash, placed inside hollow pieces of wood. Sometimes slow-burning fungi were used because they could hold heat for an incredibly long time without bursting into flames. Imagine walking for 2 days across mountains, not carrying a fire, but carrying tomorrow's fire. One person in the group often became responsible for protecting those precious embers. If they failed, everyone paid the price. This simple responsibility may have been one of the earliest examples of specialized jobs within human society. Some gathered food, some hunted, some watched for danger, and someone protected the fire. Fire wasn't just an object anymore. It had become a responsibility shared by the entire community. Still, nature always found ways to challenge them. A violent storm could soak every piece of wood. Strong winds could scatter burning branches into darkness. Floods could extinguish every ember. Entire camps could lose their fire in a single night. And when that happened, ancient humans faced one terrifying reality. They had to begin again, from absolutely nothing. Imagine failing. Your hands are bleeding. The wood is damp. The wind refuses to stop. Your children are shivering beside you. Hours have passed. Still, no fire. What happens next? For prehistoric humans, failure wasn't just frustrating. It could be fatal. Without fire, body temperature began to drop throughout the freezing night. People huddled together for warmth. Animal skins became their only protection. Caves blocked some of the wind, but they couldn't create heat. As the cold grew stronger, movement slowed. Fingers became numb. Simple tasks became difficult. The longer the fire stayed out, the harder it became to make a new one. Cold hands couldn't spin a drill as quickly. Exhausted muscles produced less force. Hope slowly disappeared. But ancient humans learned something extraordinary. They learned that surviving wasn't about strength. It was about preparation. Long before the last flame died, experienced groups were already thinking about tomorrow. They collected far more firewood than they needed. Dry wood was stored deep inside caves. Large logs burned slowly through the night. Smaller branches were saved for quickly feeding weak flames. Even children learned which wood burned the hottest, which wood created the least smoke, and which wood stayed dry after rain. Fire wasn't only a survival tool, it became knowledge. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Imagine a young child sitting beside an elder. The elder doesn't tell stories about kings or battles. Instead, he teaches something far more valuable: how to recognize dry bark, how to protect glowing embers, how to build a fire that survives the wind, how to restart a dying flame before it's too late. These lessons weren't written in books. They lived inside people's memories. Every generation inherited thousands of years of experience, and every generation added something new. Some communities discovered that certain hardwoods produced longer-lasting coals. Others found plants that ignited almost instantly. Some learned to build stone circles that protected flames from powerful winds. Others dug shallow fire pits that reflected heat back toward the people sleeping nearby. Little by little, humanity became better at controlling one of nature's most dangerous forces. Eventually, fire became much more than survival. People gathered around it after hunting. Families shared food together. Children listened to stories. Hunters planned tomorrow's journey. Elders passed down knowledge. Language itself may have grown stronger because people finally had time to sit together after sunset. Instead of hiding from darkness, humans began using the night. Many archaeologists believe that fire didn't just keep people alive, it helped create society itself. Without fire, perhaps there would have been no villages, no civilizations, no metal tools, no pottery, no bread, no cities, no modern world. One simple discovery changed everything. Yet even after mastering fire, nature always remained stronger. Lightning still started massive wildfires. Heavy rain still destroyed camps. Strong winds still scattered burning logs. Humans never truly controlled fire. They learned to cooperate with it. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson our ancestors left behind. Technology doesn't eliminate nature, it helps us work with it. Today, making fire takes only a second. A lighter, a match, a single button. Most of us never stop to think about it. But thousands of years ago, every flame represented hours of work, generations of knowledge, and the determination to survive another night. Now imagine someone quietly removes every lighter, every match, every stove, every source of electricity from your life. Then they leave you alone in a cold forest just before sunset. Could you build a fire before darkness arrives? Could you keep your family warm? Could you protect them from predators? Could you cook food? Could you survive until morning? The uncomfortable truth is, most modern people couldn't. Not because we're less intelligent, but because we've forgotten skills our ancestors depended on every single day. For prehistoric humans, fire wasn't a convenience, it wasn't a luxury, it wasn't entertainment. It was the line between safety and fear, between warmth and freezing, between hunger and nourishment, between life and death. So the next time you strike a match or click a lighter, take a moment to appreciate the incredible journey behind that tiny flame, because somewhere in the distant past, a family sat in complete darkness, praying that one tiny glowing ember would become fire once again. And thanks to people like them, human civilization never went dark. The end.